In this video, we are going to be updating an outdated China hutch. Hey everybody, welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher. I am Lauren and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be turning this outdated China hutch into a more modernized looking China hutch for a client of mine. I'm sure a lot of us have these types and styles of China hutches and they just really aren't modern anymore. And so my client wants me to update hers. We're going to be doing things like removing the doors, giving it a new finish, and then even a fun surprise inside. So if you're interested, just keep watching. All right, so like I said, first things first, we are going to be removing the doors from this piece. We thought that it just really closes off what's going to be on the inside of the cabinet. So we are going to go ahead and open everything up, and I'll either give these back to the client or repurpose them myself. All right, and since we're not using the doors, even when it's refinished, I am also going to remove all of the door clasps that held the doors in place when they were closed. And what I'm going to do is, because there's all these holes from the remnants of the doors and these little clasps, I'll just wood fill those and sand them down so that you'll never even know they were there. All right, now I'm gonna have Neiman help me lay it down on its back because there's light fixtures in here. The bulbs are gone because the client has them, but I wanna get the actual light fixtures out because I don't wanna paint those, but can't really see, so we're gonna lay it down on its back. It's a lot lighter without those doors on there. Seems like the screws on all of the light fixtures are like really stripped. So I think instead of removing them like I was hoping, I'll just have to put some plastic around them when I'm ready for the actual paint coat or primer. So now that we've got all of the hardware off, all the doors removed, it's gonna be time to remove this piece of wood right here. So the reason that I am going to remove this wooden piece right here is because since we're not putting the doors back on, we felt that it just looked a bit lopsided with only one wooden piece. There was like a faux wooden piece between the doors of this one that was attached to the door, or else we could have kept both of them. But I do think that removing this is going to give us a much better, more open concept shelving system here. So I'm going to use one of my favorite tools that I just love to have on hand because you never know when you might need it, and it is the multi-tool or the oscillating tool, whatever you want to call it, but it's great for cutting through things. The blade that I have is like a multi-purpose blade, so it can work with, you know, metal, wood, that type of thing. So great for cutting around baseboards if you're installing floors, or great to cut off excess pieces of furniture that you may be working on. I am gonna do right at this little crease here on the top and on the bottom, and I've checked and really this is not structural. The only thing that it was holding was the door, so we should be good structurally without it. There's a screw in there, I think. I don't know what it's held on with, but I got this off. So we'll just patch everything that was, you know, ruined, I guess you could say, in the process. But other than that, I think I'm also gonna take these off just because they're really not necessary and I want it to be as clean as possible up there. So now that we've got all those extra pieces off, I am going to give a go at removing the backer board here. It's in really good condition, but I want to do something different with it rather than paint it like the rest of it. So I think the easiest way is gonna be to actually remove it so I can work on it separately, paint the hutch separately, and then put them both together in the end. Voila! That's the bare bones. Okay, now we need to clean. It's time to clean, and I am using my favorite cleaner because this does not require you to rinse anything off. So it's like you clean it and you're done. And I get so many questions. I think my top question is, why do I clean before I sand? And because I'm gonna have to just basically clean up the dust after. And the reason is because I don't wanna grind down the oils and the furniture polishes and things into the surface of the furniture. So I like to just start with a clean slate. That's kind of the second reason. Like, I don't know where this furniture has been. Now, granted, you know, a client piece is a little bit different, but like if you're getting it off Facebook Marketplace or thrift stores, like I just want to start with a clean slate. So I take that one extra step to clean before I sand. And I get this furniture prep cleaner on Lily Moon Paint's website. So I'll link it down below and you can get 10% off with my code FFT10. But I'm just gonna spray it and wipe everything down. Another awesome thing that you can do while you're cleaning too is just kind of like take inventory of any blemishes that may need to be filled on your next step before you start sanding. I like to do my repairs before I sand because then I'll just sand my Bondo or my wood filler off. And so like when I'm cleaning, I'm just always looking around my piece, making sure that I don't miss any areas that potentially need to be filled in. Now this piece is pretty much in very clean condition, so it won't be too dirty, but I'm just gonna make sure to get all that furniture polish and any remaining dust off of the surface. My next step is going to be to scuff sand the surface of the entire hutch, both the bottom and the top and the drawers and the doors, because we've got a really glossy finish that we need to get rid of so that we can make sure that our paint is going to adhere. It's time to sand. So these surfaces are super, super glossy. You can see like the light reflection. I can see my reflection. That means that it's so glossy, which is then going to hinder the primer and the paint from adhering really well to the surface. So what we're going to do is called scuff sanding. Now this piece specifically is quite a bit more glossy than typical furniture pieces that I work on. So when that's the case, it's just really important to really scuff up the surface so that the surface has more of a tooth and it's just like a little bit rough. We're not trying to go like super rough, just a little bit. And I'm gonna do a 120 grit sandpaper on my Surf Prep sander here. And then we're just gonna go over the entire surface with this sandpaper to scuff it up. And then once I get the top here done, I'll show you kind of how I'm gonna tackle around the edges since they are kind of beveled. I don't want to hinder any of the curvature here, so I'll show you how to tackle that here in just a minute. All right, so I just remembered that I told you guys that I usually do repairs before I sand, and I think I just got ahead of myself. I got scuff sanding, and I forgot that I have a lot of repairs to do. Well, not even repairing it, but more so just filling in a lot of the holes that we're no longer gonna be using. So before I sand down the doors, I figure that I can grab my Bondo and put that on, and then while that's hardening up, I can then use that time to sand the rest of the drawers. So let's fill some holes. So usually I would be using Bondo for this particular job, but I think Bondo like discontinued their products that we have all been using for the longest time. Like, I can't find it anywhere. I've been to like all the hardware stores. I've talked to other people. They can't find it either. Amazon doesn't carry it anymore, at least not in a reasonable price. So don't worry if you can't find Bondo, whether it be the all-purpose putty or the wood filler. There are other products that do the exact same thing as Bondo. And so I'm gonna use the JB Weld Wood Restore Repair Putty. And it's the same thing. It's got the one part in here and then the cream hardener in the tube. So don't freak out. I'm going to go ahead and mix some of this up. It's still the same as Bondo in that you don't want to mix up too much because it does harden pretty quickly. So what I am gonna do is just take a small amount and then let that be mixed up first. And then if I need more, I'll mix more. I just like to cut up old cardboard boxes into little squares, and then that's what I use to mix my Bondo so that then I can just toss it right after. So I had forgotten to fill these little pinholes from these hardware pieces that I'm not replacing. So that's what I'm doing real quick. But I did sand down the rest of the Bondo, and honestly, it sanded down so nice and flush that I only needed one round of Bondo on most areas. There was just this little tiny area on the corner down here of the bigger gouge, but after that Bondo hardens up here and there, I'll sand one more time, clean up the sanding dust, and we're ready for primer. All right, it is time to prime. We are going to be using some Bonding Boss, which is Dixie Belle's newest primer. It's actually like a bonding primer and a stain blocking primer all in one formula. And I'm going to use the clear because I'm going dark with this piece. My client wants black. And since the piece is already so dark, I don't really want to spray it with white or gray because I want to go from a dark color to another dark color instead of going from dark to light to dark again. This will hopefully just kind of help with full coverage after 2 coats of the black. So I'm going to go ahead and strain it into my Wagner Flexio 5000 here. I've already got it all mixed up, so we're just going to strain that in there so that there are no chunks that end up inside of my spray gun and then cause any clogs and things like that. Once that loads up, we'll move everything over to the spray tent and get 1 coat of this Bonding Boss on there. While everything is drying as far as the primer goes, I figured I can start to work on this backer board. I really would like to sand it down, but I'm not really 100% sure what I'm working with here. It seems to be a piece of like chipboard, maybe, so I'm gonna go really slow and see if I can potentially save the veneer. And that just means I need to get all the finish off because we're gonna go for a lighter look here on this guy in the backer board. So I'm just gonna use a 120 grit and go slow. So hopefully I don't bust through the veneer. All right, I am going to drill some new hardware holes because we're replacing the old hardware with these new black handles, which I think are pretty sleek and are gonna really just elevate the look of this. We're going black on black. These are 5-inch poles, so I've got my hardware jig here, which I'm gonna set to the correct measurements so that I can get these in the exact correct spot so that I can drill perfect holes the first time. That is why I did this before I started painting, because I didn't want to mess up the finish at all, and honestly there's kind of a little indent around the hole, so I think I'm gonna have to fill that in with a little bit more Bondo and sand it smooth. And pro tip, drill your hardware holes before you do your paint coats to avoid messing up your brand new finish. It is time to paint. I'm still working on the backer board, but I'm trying to like kill two birds, one stone type of thing. So since the primer is dry, I'm ready to paint, and I'll come back to the backer board once the paint is drying. I am gonna be painting it with black. So one of my favorite blacks is this Silk Anchor by Dixie Belle, and I'm gonna go ahead and filter that into my spray gun. And I like to add just a little bit of water. I'm gonna go ahead and put this, well, as much as will fit in here because it's a larger project. I'm gonna do 2 coats, so I might as well just put as much paint in there as will hold, because I'm gonna be probably using all of it. So I can tell why this is a bonding primer. It gave this piece a little bit of tooth, not like texture that you would feel, but just like a little tooth so that the paint is really going to adhere. And I'm glad I went ahead and did that because this piece was super glossy and smooth. So I was worried about adherence, but we should be good to go now that I did that bonding primer. I'm gonna test my spray pattern on this cardboard piece here because I wanna make sure that I've got a good flow through my spray gun, and then we're gonna go ahead and spray all the pieces. Everything's dry for first coat, so I'm gonna take just a sponge sander, and this is a really fine grit, probably like a 400, and I'm just gonna rub it over the entire surface to smooth any lumps out or get any debris off of the surface, and it's really gonna give me a nice smooth finish going into the second coat of paint, which is thus going to help us get a really smooth and flawless finish at the the very end. If you take this extra time to just smooth it out, it's going to help you really get a great finished product. All right, I'm ready for coat number 2. And so I went ahead and wiped back all that dust I created from smoothing everything out. It's got a really nice smooth finish, but there are some spots that I missed on the first coat or just need a second coat for full coverage and full protection, because this silk paint does have the built-in top coat, but it really only works fully if you do 2 coats. So a couple different reasons why we do 2 coats of paint. I'm gonna put my mask on and get to spraying. So while that's drying over there, I am gonna work on this backer board. I got it all sanded down. I started with that 120 grit to get most of it off and then smoothed it out with a 180 and a 220. So now we're really smooth, and I think it was like a bit thicker of veneer than I was thinking. Or it still could be like a full solid wood piece. I'm still really not sure, but I didn't bust through it if it is veneer, so I'm really glad about that, because we savored it. And we're just gonna be able to do a quick paint wash over this. So it's kind of reddish, and I don't want it to be this red. We're kind of trying to match it to her dining table. Not an exact match, but a little bit closer. So what I'm gonna use is the Algonquin from Fusion, and this is just a good tan color to go ahead and water down a tad bit. I've already got some water inside of my paint, or of my bucket here. And then I'm not really measuring, I'm just gonna dump a little bit in there. We'll mix it up. Just like any typical paint wash, I'm gonna go the direction of the wood grain. I'm gonna do it in, I think I'm gonna do the whole thing, and then I'll wipe back the excess once it is all covered. So what this is going to do is it's going to just help take those reddish tones out of the wood and really neutralize it, especially once I put a top coat on there. If I were to just put a top coat over this wood, raw wood, without doing the paint wash, it would really turn pretty dark and pretty red. And since I don't want those tones, it's a little trick to just kind of neutralize it all with a tan paint wash, wipe it back, and then once you do the top coat, it won't darken as much, and we'll have just the tone we want. All right, so we'll let that dry and see what tone we're working with to see if we need to do anything else to get the right tone. And once that's dry, we'll check back in. All right, so because we're going black on black on black on black on black on black with all the hardware and the paint, I figured that we needed to also match the hinges. So instead of having this like bronzy color, I am gonna spray paint them with black, which is a pro tip. If you have like hinges like this or other hardware, you could always update it with spray paint. So I primed it with the shellac primer. This is just a clear primer, and it's gonna help this bond to it. This is just black satin spray paint by Behr, and I'm just gonna do nice light coats. And then while that is drying, we're gonna go in and top coat the backer board. So we've got some flat clear coat, which is just gonna give this a little protectant. It doesn't really need a lot because it's gonna be on the back, so nothing's gonna get set on it, but it's still good to protect the raw wood just from dust and oils and things that are just in the air. I like to apply it with a blue sponge. I just get a little bit of water on there, a little damp, and then I'll pour my top coat into a container, just so that it's easy for me to dip this in. And then I'm gonna go along with the wood grain again, just like I did with the actual paint wash. Then this will darken it a tad bit, but remember, we got all the reddish tones out, so this is exactly the tone we were going for. Okay, once that's dry, we'll be able to reattach it onto the back. In the meantime, I am going to start taking off the plastic of the lower half of the hutch. I'm going to throw in a special little surprise inside of the drawers. If she doesn't like it, she can always take it out, but there's some staining and I just want to cover it up, so I'm going to use some of my favorite peel and stick wallpaper. It's black with a little bit of gold, so I feel like it'll go with the vibe of this piece. It's finished. It looks really good. I can't believe how this black paint just updated this China hutch like crazy. Obviously, I did a little bit more than painting it, but overall, just the black paint made this hutch more modern and like way more aesthetically pleasing for today's day and age. So let's go over the numbers of this piece. Obviously, we didn't pay anything for the piece because it came directly from our clients. They have had this piece in their family for years. And so the piece cost us $0, which is actually really going to help on the profit side of things since we didn't have a big upfront cost at the beginning. Next, I obviously had to change out the hardware because that old Batwing hardware just really is not in style anymore. So I actually donated it to our neighbor over at Thrifty's, and he'll either use it on furniture that doesn't have any hardware or he'll sell it. That cost was $45, and then the primer and the paint, including the top coat and the paint for the backer board here, cost was $75. And then everything else miscellaneous, the tape, the plastic, the sandpaper, the little felt, sticky felt things, I don't know what you call them, that you put on the bottom of furniture. I also put some on the bottom of this guy so that it's not sitting directly on the top of the painted surface. All of that stuff miscellaneous cost $15. So we're in at a total of only $135. I still feel like I'm getting more and more confidence in pricing commission work. Custom work is super, super important because, you know, these pieces are pieces that generally the people have had for a long time. And so it puts a lot of pressure on you to like not mess up their furniture. So that tells me that I need to charge just a little bit more than maybe I usually would if I was doing a piece or a set and listing it for sale on Facebook Marketplace. So I ended up charging $1,250 for this commission set, and I worked about 10 hours on it. So if you take away the amount that I spent on it, which is $135, that means that the total profit was $1,115. And if you divide that by the 10 hours that I spent on it, that gives us an hourly wage, if that's the way you like to look at things, of $111 an hour. So this will also have 2 shelves in it. They kept the little brackets so I couldn't stage it as if it were to be like as if it's gonna look in their house. But I am really excited to see it in its new home. They're gonna be coming to pick it up here in the next couple of days. I just want it to cure up a tad bit longer just because we do have that extra time since I flipped it pretty quickly. They're not, expecting it till about next week. So they'll come and pick it up and send us photos, but follow us over on Instagram if you want to see them pick it up and their reaction. She has been waiting a really long time for this. So shout outs to Linda for working with us and trusting me with this beautiful piece of furniture. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next Thursday, and I'll see you on the flip side.